What?
He's taking over
It's
Twitter.
not Twitter anymore. Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Trent, if I haven't already met you. I didn't want to talk about my game this week, so let's talk about something else. So this is Bevy. Bevy's a cool game engine I have been trying out or playing with for like the last 3 years. I think it's really cool. Hopefully you think it's cool too. Let's have a look. So, marketing stuff. It's data-driven. Ooh, if you know what that is, you know what that is. If you don't worry about it. Supports 2D and 3D. All your usual platforms like consoles coming. It's turtled all the way down. I'll get to that later, which is actually a super cool part. And it's like free open source, so it's similar to Godot. So it got released 3 years ago. This is kind of like all I did in COVID lockdowns, which was super good timing. Good timing, whatever. But yeah, it's second in popularity, according to internet popularity, in like open source game engines on GitHub, and it has had over 800 contributors so far in just 3 years. Here's some games in Bevy so far. So this is Tiny Glade, which looks super awesome. They actually have their own renderer. They just completely swapped their own renderer out, but it uses the base stuff. You got 2D, 3D. These two games, the one on the left is like the built-in renderer, but with stylized UI graphics, and the one on the right is its own 2D renderer, again with global illumination, but the rest is the same engine under the hood. Cool, what's data-driven? Let's go really fast. So game engines, Bevy still has the same concept of like hierarchies of nodes and positions in the world, and you still have these sort of like object-like things that have components that you can like plug into them that add behavior. Your typical like game object or whatever. And in typical game objects, the game object, like the player, owns all of its parts. It owns the transform, it owns the speed variable, and it owns the functionality that operates on it. And it's sort of individual. Like player only has one transform, one speed component. This probably doesn't make sense, so just ignore it. But in a data-driven situation, all of the transforms, they all live together in like a little happy transform village, and all of the like rotations live together as well. And game objects is sort of just like, like a list of like, hey, that transform over there is mine, and that thing over there is mine. And so this is nice for like computers, because computers like operating on big chunks of the same thing at once, because that's kind of how they work. So just a real quick example. Here's some data I want to put on a game object, and here's me adding 3 game objects into the game. You're just like, it has this, and it has that, and that's it. There's no like fanciness. And then this is how we get all the names in the game that have a person attached to them. So you don't have to like keep track of all of the like names on a list somewhere. It's sort of like you're just able to query for them, similar to SQL if you've used that. And then it prints them out. Easy. And that's how you add your functions into the game. You add your add people function and the startup and the hello into the update, and you're good. As you can see, this function is like really individual. Like that's literally how you would write it. There's no like, it's not in another class or anything. So it doesn't have access to like other things in the world. So the way you can talk to other systems is by sending events. So some systems can send events, other systems can listen for them, but they're sort of completely separated. Like you could stop sending or stop listening and nothing will break like compile-wise, but yeah. You can have plugins. So if you want physics, you include the physics library, you add literally that line, and then you can start spawning things with rigid bodies, and it just works. Crazy. This is kind of my favorite part. Turtles all the way down, if you've ever heard that expression. I don't know if, yes, some nods, cool. So in a typical game engine, you'll be doing something like this. You'll be like, hey, I'm going to do some physics stuff. I'm going to see what's in here. Does it overlap with my game object or something? And maybe it's not working, and you're like, damn, what's happening? And you read the docs, and the docs are kind of iffy, and you're like, And so you're like, what is actually happening? And you're like, oh, let's open up this function and see what it's doing. Like, cool, all right, it's doing that. Okay, let's open that. And you get here. And then your IDE is like, no, you can't go any further. Stop. And it's just like a big ball of assembly you can't touch or see. Some game objects are better. For example, in Godot, you can actually like go and download the project source code and actually find out what's in there. But it's not as seamless. You don't just sort of like transition through it into like click the definition of your GDScript function and somehow appear in C++. If you can, that's cool. I don't know about it, but it's not typical. Whereas, for example, in Bevy, because the game engine and the game scripting is all in the same language and it's sort of just a library, you have this very smooth transition all the way from user code to engine code to standard library code and all the way back. So if you're debugging, you can just go all the way through and back super easily. So say our collider's a bit janky and we're like, what the hell's happening? We open up the definition and we get, this, and you're like, oh, cool, all right, what are they doing? And you open up the extract function and you get a whole bunch of math and you're like, holy shit, this is what it's actually doing. And then you can debug this if you want. That's it. That's Bevy really fast in 5 minutes, really rushed. Any questions?
What is the benefit in comparison to Unity dots?
Have you written Unity dots?
I mean, it's a bit more code.
It's, I mean, that's a bit facetious answer, but it's the whole engine is built that way, so there's like no weird translation layers between game objects and dots. It's sort of just pure dots, so you lose a lot of the translation layer overhead and like extra coding. But I mean, then you also lose all the advantages of Unity, so there's trade-offs. But it's sort of like a native dots only thing.
So 2 of the games you showed have their own render engine.
Yes.
Is it the built-in render engine just crap, or is it just...
I mean, that's the built-in with the stylized shader. The thing is, the engine is still relatively new. Like, it's only 3 years old. And as far as engines go, that's pretty recent, right? Like, Godot is 15 years old, and Unity's older. And so when these games started, like a year and a half ago, the rendering capabilities weren't as good. Or they're just people who like making games with a lot of custom stuff, and they're happy to do their own stuff, but they don't want to have to do everything. Then Bevy is a good thing, because you can be like, oh, I just want stuff to handle my game logic and maybe physics, but let me just do all the rendering myself. Yeah. So it's good because you can just completely swap that bit out.
Cool.
Slightly silly question, but do you know if the engine's named after getting a few bevies?
Well, the thing is a bird, like a bevy of birds, and that's the bevy bird.
Okay.
I don't actually know why.
Alcohol, then.
Maybe it's the secret meaning. Who knows? Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.